Sure. Yeah, so thank you very much for joining this session from campus to career. Today we'll be talking about 4 reasons to study abroad and 3 ways to get there. Name is Paul Korir, and it's my pleasure to have you on board. This series of talks are designed to help you in your journey as you grow from being a young and new in your career to being mature and established, just like this tree. And what does it take to go through this growth and maturity? It takes a number of things to make this transition. You need patience, you need diligence, you need learning, you need humility, and most importantly, you need luck. Surprisingly, luck is going to feature very heavily in your career. Now, as a backstop to all of this, I think that we are in a pivotal moment in our continent. I think that the future will heavily be influenced by Africa, and here's why. Africa is very youth rich. We have a lot of young people, and a lot of young people means that even into our future, we're going to have a lot of our population will keep growing. If you look at some of the estimates, by 2050, it is expected that a third of all young people on the planet are going to be in Africa, are going to be African youth. By I think 2100, if the estimates are correct, the population of Africa will have more than doubled. And that's really telling. So, what should you do in a world where you're surrounded by a large number of young people who need skills, who need knowledge, who need work? Well, you need to become a leader of these young people. That means you need to be taking up any opportunity you can to advance yourself and to progress so that you can lead this generation into the future. Without this kind of investments in our knowledge and our skills and our abilities, we're not going to be able to build the kind of Africa that we want. So Africa is the future. You are in Africa. If you're listening to this from Africa, then this is an opportune time for you to be investing in skills and thinking about studying abroad, for instance, and improving yourself. I'm going to start off with my story. Well, there's one man who is such a very important part of my life, and his name is Dr. Kamau Gashigi. Dr. Kamau Gashigi was my lecturer from university. He started teaching us in our third year when I was a student at University of Nairobi. And the thing that was different about Dr. Gashigi was the fact that he really encouraged students to really apply themselves and look for opportunities. And he supported my applications. Wherever I applied, he was always there to support them. He was always there as a sounding board, not just when I was a student, but even after I graduated. He was very kind, very generous, and I count him as one of the most pivotal parts in my life. And my story begins, well, really, when I was an undergraduate, we didn't really have a good experience in terms of the learning of programming. And so I was very fortunate. I managed to put together some money to buy a computer because I really wanted to learn programming. I felt that that was something that would be very important for my career. And so what I did was I managed to get a book which was called Programming with C by Shaums. So it's one of those affordable series. And it was a really good book. It had a lot of little tidbits that I applied for some of our labs. And in fact, there was one particular lab where we had a programming exercise, and I used that. I applied the knowledge from that book, and lo and behold, I was able to solve a problem that we as a class were really struggling with, and that really showed me that that was the direction I really should develop in. And so I really started paying more attention to that. So my final year project was a programming project, which I really enjoyed. And as I was coming to the end of my undergraduate year, I started thinking about, okay, where was I going to apply my knowledge? So I needed to find a domain of interest. And I really wanted to work on something that I could do as part of my project with programming, but that was not just programming in itself, but application of programming. And I came across this field or this discipline called image processing, and I just loved this. The sound of that term, image processing, sounded exciting. And so I began to look not only for projects that I could work on or books that I could read, but also places that I could apply for further study. So I remember finding a place in Australia where they had a research group in image processing. And eventually I discovered that there was application of image processing to medicine. and in particular, a field called diagnostic imaging. Little did I know at the time that diagnostic imaging was primarily about applying it to a clinical context. But I think there was a research group that would do new technologies and new methodologies in image processing for diagnostic imaging. Anyway, so I found that for me, that was image processing, and it sort of had inroads into very many fields, even into industry. So what I did was I targeted, I was looking for a particular university to study in the US. And one of the things you have to do for you to apply to a US university is for a graduate school is to do the GRE exam. That involves writing, expanding your vocabulary, as well as doing mathematics. You have to do a quantitative test. And these exams are actually quite difficult. They're not easy to do. They need a lot of prep. And the thing that I discovered, this was quite an eye-opening experience because I discovered that my writing skills were very poor. Despite the fact that, I communicated in English, I had read many books, but my education to that point had never really emphasized how to do good composition. While we did a lot of writing in primary school and high school, it was never functional, and we were never taught how to structure it and how to write proper paragraphs and how to clean up our sentences and write in the active voice and things like that, which take years to actually master and learn and just get the tips of. So anyway, I got assistance from I was involved in a theater group actually at the time, and one of the people uh, who was who was running the theater group was a lady from the UK. She was teaching at Hillcrest, and also really instrumental person in my journey. And she helped me with my writing. She took my writing and showed me how rubbish it was and how much effort I needed to develop. And she just helped me just clarify and simplify my writing. And that stayed with me ever since. So I was really keeping my ears and eyes open, and I was really looking for many opportunities. I spent a lot of time visiting websites for American universities. And again, Dr. Gashigi was really instrumental in pointing me to some of these good universities. And I think Penn State was one university that was associated with Dr. Gashigi at the time. And so eventually I settled on Duke University, and I thought, okay, so this is where there's a program on diagnostic imaging. And the application itself was actually not cheap. I think it cost $75. And I had to write a statement of purpose. I had to have my GRE exam results. And I had to do a lot of work just for the application itself. Anyway, unfortunately, that didn't go through. I wasn't accepted. And at the same time, I got a job at Safaricom. So while I had bad news on one end, I had good news on the other side. So I thought, okay, then let me pursue this job and see where this is going to take me. But I still nurtured within my heart the idea of going for further studies because I felt like what I had experienced from the University of Nairobi was not enough, and I wanted more. And that's really what I was looking for. And so while I was working, we had a Bible study that I used to attend in our neighborhood. And there was a lady in that Bible study she was actually taking a course at the time. She was doing a master's in bioinformatics with University of Manchester. And so what she didn't really have, and this is another lady who's really been very, very helpful to me. She needed help with programming. Remember, I excelled at programming. So she asked me to help her out with some of her assignments, which were in bioinformatics. Obviously, the things completely unfamiliar to me. So I said, let me take a look at your problems. She emailed me those problems, and it turned out that they weren't really difficult. They were quite straightforward. So I helped her out with the assignments, and she kept on encouraging me. She said, Korir, you need to do a master's in bioinformatics. You're very good at this. So that's when the idea started getting into my head that I should try. So one day she sent me an email that had a list of opportunities for masters and scholarships and stuff like that. And in one of them, there was a link to a professor in South Africa. So I wrote to this professor and I asked him, hey, I love mathematics. I'm bored at my job, which really was true at the time. And I said, do you have any scholarships? Because he said on his website that he was looking for students, graduate students to have as part of his research group. So he said, at the moment, I don't have any funding, but there's a school in South Africa that you may be interested in, and they do offer bursaries. So I looked into that, and it turned out it was the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences. When I went to their website, I saw there were a number of individuals they had been alumni. I knew them from my university days. So I wrote to them. I ended up meeting both of them when they had finished their time at Ames, and they told me that this is really it's a good thing to apply for. They give you a scholarship. It's a great experience, and so I applied, and I said, I'm going to try out my luck. And to cut a long story short, I managed to get in. Now, this for me was, if you think about it, and these are some of the themes I'm going to mention today. I had tried to apply to one of the best schools in the world. Like Duke is in the top 10, if not top 10, top 20 universities in the whole world. And that didn't work out. And there's a reason for that. It's because some of these are very competitive universities. Even if my GRE score was actually quite a good score, it wasn't good enough for me to get into this university because there are people who apply from China and India, countries which have got hundreds of thousands of applicants to all these good schools, and they have got their scores are just off the charts. A lot of them get full scores, like literally. And so my option was then to find something which was more accessible. And that then became a launch pad. And I'm going to point this out later on. So that just became the journey, the starting point for me to then find a place where I could then do my PhD and then even get work abroad. So what I'm telling you today is not theoretical. I'm not telling you theoretical things. I'm telling you things from my story, from my life, from my experience, in the hope that not so that you can repeat them, but so that you can use them as an inspiration to try and get into the places that we are talking about, which are schools which are abroad. And the moral of the story, if there's any one message that I want you to take away from this, it's this: that straight roads don't make skillful drivers. For me to give you an experience from my life, it means I have had to go, I have got meandering down different paths, some of which were at the time looked like dead ends. And I can tell you, like when I was doing my master's, I was really fearful of what kind of future that I was heading for. But I knew that I had to take that road. I had to go down that path because I didn't want to settle for what was available in Kenya at the time. And that's what I offer you as think about think about your future and think about what more you can accomplish if you can grow yourself and develop yourself. So now let's talk about the four reasons. We're now going to go into four reasons. And reason number one is exposure. So Kenya is a great country. Like we've really come very far since independence. We've really developed. But the truth of the matter is, we are not yet a developed country. We still have a long way to go. And I think that one of the ways that you can then really experience what the civilization is possible is what is possible with this kind of civilization, because we have a borrowed civilization. This is not our civilization. Our civilization was completely, I would say, completely replaced by what we got from colonialism. And not and of course there are good parts and bad parts to that, but I just want you to think positively here that what we experience right now is a foreign civilization. And for a lot of us growing up into it, we think that we are as modern as could be. And there is a lot of modernity here, but it's not the full extent of this civilization. And therefore, going abroad is a way to expose yourself and see what more is possible. And you get this when you talk to people who've lived abroad and studied abroad and they have been exposed to that life. They are operating from a point of view that they know that things can actually be improved. And there's a certain frustration that they have. And that's in terms of their lifestyle and cultural habits. Things as simple as timekeeping, honesty, even the way we drive on the road. The way we drive on the road, a lot of times, is controlled by the fact that we are competing with matatus and boda bodas. But if you are in a country where none of these are present, where you can actually estimate the amount of time it takes for you to go from your doorstep to your destination, then it changes the way you think. All of a sudden, it frees up so much capacity in your mind for you to think creatively and productively. So, just those cultural habits that it's easy to assume that we have accomplished the highest levels in Kenya, and we haven't. There's still a lot of way to go. And then, in terms of labs, if you're working in a technical field or a field where you need access to labs and equipment and procedures and expertise, then these are a dime and a dozen available in developed countries. And therefore, having access to these facilities and resources completely changes how you approach some of these problems. Things like libraries. In Kenya, we struggle even within institutions to have sufficient reading resources. While in developed countries, they have public libraries which have the latest books, and they put in a lot of effort to try and get people to read. Their culture has a lot of reading in it. And this is why I really encourage, if you watch the previous series, I really emphasize the need for you to read and expose yourself to books and journals and all these kinds of learning material. Also, research funding. While there is access to certain research funding in Kenya, unfortunately, my observation has been that the kind of research funding that's available in Africa is usually targeted at solving problems which are really at the basic level. So, for example, fields like ICT for development, they're not in it to break to go get to the cutting edge of technology. They are about the basic application of technology. How do computers improve learning in schools? Like those are the basic questions that they're answering. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's important research. But if you want to be at the cutting edge with nanotechnology and artificial intelligence and new materials and stuff like that, then you really want to be in an environment where all the basics have been solved and you can think about all these advanced things. So therefore, the research funding that is there is extensive. You have access to things like travel grants and things that really advance you. And the other thing that I think is really important is exposure to people at another level. I'll tell you something. When I was a doctoral student, my doctoral advisor he was just, I've never seen anyone so smart. And yet I'm surprised that, like as much as he is accomplishing a lot, I always used to wonder, why isn't he one of the top scientists in the world? And not in a bad way, just as a realization that there are people who are really, really bright. And however bright they are, there are others who are so much brighter. And you can imagine working alongside someone like that, the kind of habits that you learn, the kind of behaviors that you pick up, the kind of perspectives that you develop. That's it really changes how you look at the world. Being in the same lab with top researchers, top technologists, really changes how you perceive the world, as well as giving you access to networks. So that was idea number one, exposure. Idea number two, reason why you should go abroad is for growth. And growth is not just confined to your intellectual growth, growth in terms of you to learning adaptability, how to engage with people from different cultures. If you live in cosmopolitan cities like New York and London and Berlin, where you have people from all over the world who have all manner of lifestyles and habits and a means of expression, it changes how you think of society. If you're coming from a village where everyone speaks the same language and everyone has the same religion and everyone does things in the same way, then your cultural universe is really tiny. And if you go to a world where you have Chinese restaurants across the street and you have got colleagues from Turkey and from South Africa and from South America and from all over the world, and you learn about the little things that they do that may not be obvious because they're not directly visible to you, like the kind of tea that they drink or the way they cook their eggs. All these little things add to expanding and your cultural universe. You also learn a lot of independence. You learn how to actually depend on yourself. If you're expected to make sure that your residence in a country is legal, then you have to put in certain effort because the consequences are very big. And therefore, you learn to depend on yourself. You learn how to reach out to people who you need help from, how to contact this university administration, or how to work with different resources that are available. And therefore, it just teaches you a lot of independence, and that's a really important way in which you grow. I've talked about cross-cultural intelligence and how that is in terms of the foods and ideas and your exposure. And in reality, another thing that you could grow in is in financial backing, the kind of resources that you have. If you're living in an environment where the money is stronger and you're able to save up, that can actually do a lot for you and can give you a soft landing when you come back. If you want to set up your own business or you want to get into entrepreneurship, then those are kind of the opportunities that for growth that there are. The third reason that I think it's important for you to go abroad is for the kind of access that you can have, the kind of things that are available once you go abroad. Now, I'm going to say something that some people will disagree with, but this it's actually pans out, and I think this is actually true. There are certain jobs that will not employ you. I would say international jobs that will never employ you or almost never employ you if all you have is Kenyan education qualifications. That's just a fact. So, for example, institutions, multilateral institutions, for example, like the World Bank, for them to give you an international job, I think it's almost impossible for them to give you based on your Kenyan education. And therefore, it is to your advantage for you to go out and have an international exposure, maybe work in an organization abroad that shows that you are adapted to different cultures for you to get such jobs. And I know they may disagree, but that's just the way things work out. It's almost impossible to get some of these jobs. Places like the United Nations, you can get local jobs, but those local jobs are really not the jobs that really have an impact. The jobs that really have an impact at the higher levels require you to have exposure, and that exposure comes by you being abroad. So some jobs in academia, some jobs in industry, having access to these jobs also is really instrumental. And you notice this, a lot of people who go abroad, they go for a master's, they go for a PhD, they're then able to transition from their educational experience into industry or into academia and get they have different forms of access that being in Kenya will not entitle you to. Also, if you want to do further research, if you want to proceed, as I said, the kind of research that we do in Kenya tends to be very fundamental. You may have one or two groups who are really strong in cutting edge research, but they have very few and far between, which means competition to get into those groups is also very high. But if you're in a university in, I don't know, in Chicago, and just because of your proximity to that research group and you're able to walk up to their lab and talk to them and get to know them, that just opens doors for you. So access, by being out there, the access is so much easier. Also, if you want to get into entrepreneurship, there are a lot of opportunities out there for entrepreneurship. If you want to try and transfer practices back to Kenya or apply your skills directly within those economies, in fact, most developed countries will give you an opportunity after you finish your studies. They'll give you an opportunity to stay on and put into practice because they know that you have learned a lot of valuable skills and that they want those skills to be put into practice in their economy. And so those are some of the things that are really important in terms of the kind of access you can get. The fourth and final reason why I think it's important for you to go abroad is recognition. Recognition. And here there are really 2 points. One is the credibility. Once you have a degree that is from abroad, for you to make future applications, it's so much easier. Once they see that you're from a renowned institution or an institution that is outside your boundaries, then they're able to give you better consideration. You're able to stand out. Also, the alumni networks that you have access to are also another avenue through which you can either get jobs or be recognized. In certain industries, the employment is very heavily biased towards alumni networks. And if you're an alumnus of a school where you have a preference, then that is always to your advantage. The other form of recognition is a kind of achievements that you'd have. So the publications that you have or participation in certain events by virtue of having been abroad, that also gives you a lot of exposure and insights into what's available out there. So we've talked about the why. So we've talked about why you should go and study abroad. Now, let's talk about the how. And I'm going to give you 3 key tips, and hopefully these will be instrumental. And as you'll see, a lot of them are things that I was very just lucky because of my persistence. I was very lucky to walk down this road. The first thing is this is a long game. And it's not the kind of game that you can start applications this week and you'll be accepted next week. It doesn't work that way. If you want to get into a study program, research program abroad, you need to plan a year, 2 or 3 in advance. The earlier you are in your undergraduate journey, the earlier you are in your education, the better you are, the better it is for you. And therefore, you need to plan early, start early, think 12, 18 months head start. In fact, a lot of applications are bound by deadlines. And therefore, you want to make sure that by the time you're close to the deadline, by the time you're putting in your application, you have everything around you. So, for example, something like the GRE, if you're to do something like the GRE, how long does it take? It takes about 6 months for you to prepare. It takes a good amount of time, especially if your skills are not really strong, if your writing is weak, if your vocabulary is small, and if you want to get a score which is really good, you need to start preparing very, very early in advance. You need to save up for some of these exams. Some of these exams cost more than $100 just for you to do the exam, $150. Some of these exams are required for you to prove your language competency, and therefore you have to, if you've been ignoring, emphasizing English as your main language and you've been mixing language code switching, then it will be very difficult for you when you have an exam for you to do well. So these things need months of preparation. And the truth of the matter, even if you don't succeed, the skills that you build, the literacy skills, the numeracy skills, the vocabulary that you build as part of growing, preparing for these exams are going to be very valuable for you going forward, which makes you wonder. I mean, people should develop these skills independent of whether they're trying to study abroad. So you need to save up and you need to prep for these entrance exams if you want to go abroad. The next thing I would say is find a domain, because this helps you filter out from the noise that's available. If you go to a website that says scholarships available, they have scholarships in virtually every field. And you don't want to commit a year or two or three or four or five to a domain that you've not really thought deeply about, that is not well connected with what you're doing. Therefore, as early as possible, find a domain of interest. For me, it was image processing. And I was trying to find where can I apply image processing. And opportunities started showing up. I started finding the books. I started finding the resources. I started finding people who could support me on this journey. So find a domain, because that helps you just filter out from the billions of opportunities out there into the subset that you're really aiming for. So that's very important. The next thing I would say is break down your targets. Now, if you notice, when I first applied, that I aimed for a top school in the world, and that was a big mistake because it cost me a lot of money to try and get into that top school, and I didn't make it because I was competing with Chinese and Indians who have got perfect scores, almost perfect scores, because they prep for these religiously. Well, the thing at least that I did was that I was persistent, and therefore, when by breaking it down into something which was more achievable, I was able to then make some progress on this. Now, I'm going to say something which will shatter a lot of hopefully misconceptions. Between Harvard University and University of Kabianga, there are more than 1,500 universities. Now, I'm not sure about this ranking. It used to be that our universities were even way, way, way lower. But anyways, whatever the case, our universities are not very high on the international universities ranking list. And Harvard is always going to be top 10. It's one of the top universities. The mistake that a lot of young people do is they apply to Harvard or they apply to Yale or Princeton directly from the undergraduate degree. Now, let me tell you something, that you're not prepared for Harvard. Most people are not prepared for Harvard if they are from Kenya. But if you break it down by aiming for, this is my strategy. I'll put it to you practically. Look for a BRICS country, okay? Brazil, Russia, India, China, or South Africa. Try and get into one of these countries. It is so much easier because you have people who are trying to get out of these countries. So for you coming from Africa, if you go into, for instance, Brazil, and you find a scholarship to go and do a master's there, or you go and do a PhD which is funded in an area of interest where you've picked your domain, then that gives you a launch pad then to head for one of those top universities. So instead of going straight from University of Kabianga or Kisii University or whichever university in Kenya, however passionate you are about your university, the truth of the matter is they are very low in the rankings. Try and just take a step up. Try and get to a university which is in the top 500, for example. And BRICS countries have got a lot of universities in the top 500, and they're really good universities. And they don't have to be the best in everything. They could be a specialist in one particular area which you're targeting. So that's how I would narrow it. Get into such a university. And then from there, now target to jump yet another 200 or 300 universities. And if you keep doing that, you end up in Harvard and Yale and MIT and Princeton and Cambridge and Oxford and all these big universities. So don't go straight to Harvard right at the top. This is our top universities, Kenyatta University and University of Nairobi. And then we have all these universities. If you notice, they are actually organized alphabetically. In other words, there is little information for anyone to actually classify them correctly. That's not great. Our universities aren't doing so great. I mean, they have definitely come far, but they're not at the standards at where they should be. They have a lot of room for growth, and that's exciting. But at the same time, it works to your disadvantage if you try to apply directly. Now, if you get in, all power to you. I would still advise, like, that would be an exception and not the norm. The second thing I would advise you to do if you want to get into these universities is to build your profile. That's why you need to start this early. And your profile consists of a wide panoply of skills and abilities and involvements. First of all, get a strong first degree. Everything you do should be to get a strong first degree. If you can get a first class, if you have the aptitude for that, go for it. Go for it, because that is going to open a lot of doors. Like, even if you're from a bottom university and you get a first class degree, that is considered very positively. Okay. Now, I didn't get a first class degree, so I think I am in the majority when I say that you can still progress even without a first class degree. But if you can, please do. Don't lose that opportunity. Second is, try and have leadership opportunities. Take advantage of them wherever you are. Whether it's things like being a class rep, whether it's in being in societies, whether it's in all these kind of activities where you can show leadership. Take them, because those added to your CV are things that stand out and give you a distinction. Third is, participate in volunteering activities. There are many organizations where you can. Rotaract, which is the university arm of the Rotary Club. There is ISEC, which is, I think it has to do with a lot of business, and there are a lot of opportunities worldwide to be part of that. When I was an undergraduate, we had something called ICL, I Choose Life. I don't know if it still exists. I think it does. Take part in a lot of these volunteer activities. Learn beyond your class skills. Fourth, get work experience. Now, jobs are hard to come by. Volunteer even in a company. Write for them software for free. Do things on the weekend. I've seen a lot of ladies who are in the supermarkets who help with merchandising. Like, those are great opportunities for you to meet people and stretch yourself and expand your networks. Get internships if you can. I run an internship program for tech graduates, and I'm always looking for the best and the brightest because I want to add to them knowledge and skill. My internships tend to be unpaid, but hopefully by the end of the internship, you learn something, you get practical skills, you learn time management, you learn techniques on how to work with software. So if that's your thing, get internships, work for free, pay your transport to get somewhere and help a company improve. Then you expand your network. You have people who can give you a recommendation. Do personal projects. There's nothing stopping you from writing your own software. There's nothing stopping you from buying electronic components and building your own circuits and things like that. Do your own projects, because these things show up and they give you an edge when you're competing against hundreds or thousands of people. And invest in fundamental skills. This is another thing that I really emphasize in my internship program. I try and ensure that all interns do typing practice to get touch typing skills. You're competing with people who have been typing from age 5. So they are typing at 100 words per minute while you're typing at 25 to 35 words per minute. And you will never improve if you keep on using the same approach. So there are fundamental skills like literacy. Being able to write clearly is very important. Presentation skills, being able to stand in front of a group of people and express yourself. Coding, you don't have to be a top coder, but you need to understand what's going on this day and age where computers are going to be taking over people's jobs. You need to learn how to intervene and work with the computer. And the third thing is leverage mentors and networks. You need to be known by your supervisors, your lecturers, and tutors. Make sure you're engaging with them. Bother them with questions, bother them with asking them for projects and for insights. Work closely with your lecturers, even if they may seem to fob you off and not be interested. Try and be close to them. Okay, always be active in networks, whether it is religious groups like myself. I was part of a Bible study and I got to meet someone who exposed me to other opportunities. Volunteer groups, as we've talked about. Be active. Don't just be a passive person. Your name is there just for the sake of showing up. And actively seek mentors. Write an email to someone who is a senior person and tell them you want to be mentored. You can meet them. You can pay for them for a cup of coffee. Like, that is something very small. It will cost you 1,000 shillings. Take them to Java and ask them for tips and tricks how to improve your career from their experience. And join talks like this where you learn about how to progress in your career. So there are professionals out there who are interested in sharing what they have learned. And of course, use your family. You have got an uncle, you've got an aunt, you've got someone who has progressed very far. Bother them. Let them know that you're interested. So people are always ready to help those who are interested and keen and eager. It's very rare that someone who is accomplished in their career will be a snob to people who want to learn. If all you want to do is learn and you are genuine and you are honest and you are determined, then people will pour information into your lap. But if you expect that knowledge will find you, if you're looking for knowledge through TikTok and YouTube and Facebook, you're not going to find the kind of knowledge that's going to advance you. So just a recap, the 4 reasons: exposure, growth, access, and recognition. And the 3 tips are strategize, break it down, build your profile, okay, and leverage mentors and networks. So that's it for this presentation. Next month, we're going to be talking about personality. Now, it turns out that understanding your personality is such an important thing. As you're progressing into your journey of your career, you need to first of all locate yourself. And this is what understanding your personality is about. This is by my good friend, Carol Peters. Carol Peters has been instrumental in helping me understand myself from the point of view of my personality. And therefore, I invite you to please attend this session. And then in November, we're going to have a practical talk by Samuel Lungati on his journey in software engineering. And he's going to give you his practical experience and how he traversed quite a number of jobs to eventually land where he is and grow in the skill set that he has. 2 other announcements I'm going to make. If you are interested in programming and you have been struggling for the longest time to set up your computer, just the basics, just set up, then I want to invite you on Monday at 8 p.m. to Breaking the Setup Barrier. This is an event where you can learn how to set up your computer correctly. We can go through how to work with the IDE. It's going to be an opportunity for you to pick up just how to set up. That's all we're doing. We're not even getting into coding. Coding will get, there's a lot of resources, but without having the right setup, then you will struggle for a long time. So join me for this event. And I'll be talking about this morning at 10:30. I'm going to be talking about the TOC Python workshop. We have a new one that's coming up and I'll be announcing information about that. There are early booking discounts, early bird booking discounts. This is not just another coding class. This is a new perspective on how to write code. And I'll be announcing what this workshop will be about and how you can actually engage. So at 10:30 today, that's going to be in about a few minutes from now. Please join me for this session. If you're watching this on video, then you're going to get access to this. There'll be a video that's posted on YouTube for you to learn more. So that's all from me, and I'm happy to take any questions now on experiences in trying to go abroad. Thank you very much. Any questions? Even in the chat, if you have a question, please type it out in the chat.
Hello and good morning, Mr. Korir. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you, Ismail. Thank you for joining. I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank you for taking your time to be able to give us this mentorship. in my point of view, I feel like the things you're telling us, they're really valuable, and they're things that I've never heard even in my course of being an electrical engineering student at UON. Yeah, so I don't have any question for now. Just wanted to thank you and to say I'm looking forward to the subsequent meetings.
Thank you, Ismail. That really means a lot to me. I mean, for me, this is it's a work of faith. I do this, I just throw things out there. I know that if I had access to something like this when I was an undergraduate, I probably would have, set out so much earlier. But thank you for your sentiments. I really appreciate them. Any other question or comment? Okay, so thank you for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in any of these other events. So please sign up and have a lovely day. Take care. Bye.